Welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here. This
Yeah?
is the last thing I'm doing.
This is your last press for the book, like ever.
Yes.
This is a good day,
I don't want to talk about it ever again.
You have been on a whirlwind with this book, though, because I mean, like, you're ending it here, but I mean, it kicked off in a place few authors dream of their book ever kicking off, and that was with Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
I remember Oprah like made a video and she was like, guys, my book club is coming back.
Right.
And people were like, oh, what's the book? And she was like, Ta-Nehisi Coates,
Right.
The Water Dancer. And
Right.
I mean, it's just blown up. Like how did that even come about, you and Oprah and the book?
How did that come about? Well, as I've said now several times, not that I mind saying it here again.
No,
Very
tell us
happy
how
to be
you hate to be here, Ta-Nehisi. Tell all these people how you hate them for being
Very happy to be here. So I worked on this for a long time.
Right.
So I worked on it for, actually it took about 10 years from, we both had the same editor. And when I
Right.
finished my first book, Chris Jackson, he said, you should try a novel. And it finally got done. And it's the funniest thing because when it was done, you never know who is going to be touched or moved by
That's
what
true.
you're writing.
Right.
Because it was never like, oh, this clearly is a book, that Oprah Winfrey would be very interested in. And then, I don't even know how you do that, you know what I mean? But whatever it was,
can I tell you, that would be the most amount of hubris to have as a person. If you finish writing a book and
Yes.
you're like, this is a book Oprah
Yes.
Winfrey is
natural. Oprah put, got it, But no, and then I got a call, man. I was actually coming back from vacation with my wife, and I got a text message, and the text message said from Chris, you have to be available at 10:30, a very important call.
And it was Oprah Winfrey.
It was Oprah Winfrey.
And since then, it really has been a beautiful journey for not just the book, but yourself, because like a lot of people know you as a writer who critiques and analyzes America, its history and its present, and how the history has affected the present and how people don't want to deal with that. But the novel is a completely different world for you. I mean, obviously you've written comics, but this is fiction that is in a very real place. You write about the character in the book who lives in a world, and this is what really intrigues me about the book is you don't refer to the people in the book as slaves.
Yeah.
This is when it's taking place, in and around slavery in America. But you're very selective about the words you use. Why don't you call the people slaves, and why don't you say they are slaves and as a slave, and you don't do that? Why?
Well, I like for African Americans particularly, there is, and one day we'll have to talk about whether it's the same way with apartheid, but there is a popular notion in the mindset of what I now call enslavement was, and so there's this idea of, rape, chains, whips, roots, your name is Toby, like that. That's what people, and so what you have to do is like, you have to make it your own, and you have to create a kind of image almost, or a world. Like it's slavery, but it's your slavery, if that makes any sense. It's your rendition of it, your vision of it. I wanted something that did not exist. And so a strong part of that, man, is, coming up with new ways to describe it. And so to get new ways to describe it, you need new words,
Interesting. Why do you choose to place it in this time? I mean, we live in a world where people might say, there's so many stories out there. It feels like we always talk about slavery, but you chose to tell an extremely unique story. In a very familiar world.
Yeah, well, there's the big reason and the small reason. Small reason is the world that I was, the period in American history I was most entranced by. The larger reason is so much of our own culture actually comes out of that period indirectly or directly. So you think about, like, say, Gone with the Wind, right? Which is, I guess the most published, novel in American history. You think about something like Birth of a Nation, which is responded to a period after that, but is rooted in that and sets the table for all of American film. You think about all of the Westerns that basically are sequels, coming out of the Civil War. There's always some, guy who fought for the Confederacy that, ends up, out in the West trying to make good. And so I just wanted to go to the source of it, man. You know what I mean? I wanted to try to tell it from my perspective, and doing it in a different way.
What really surprised me about the book is I didn't know what to expect at all. You go, Ta-Nehisi's going to write this book, and then you open the first few pages, and you're reading about this guy, Hiram, and you're like, wait, this is a story that seems to be about slavery, and it's like, no, it's not. It's a story of a people who are trying to achieve something, and he has these superpowers that he discovers. And what's really interesting is it's not just a flight of fancy. It's a really powerful exploration into like what your superpower may be as a person. You know, like how you talk about how people were freedom fighters and what they did during that time. Why did you choose superpowers? Why did you choose, like, were you inspired by the world of, you know, you were writing on Black Panther, etc. Is that part of it, or was it just you trying to create something completely different?
No, honestly, it was the other way around. I mean, it is, I guess, to my great benefit that, like, I had 10 years to get it, you know what I mean? To basically learn to write a novel. You know, it's almost wrong to say I was working on it. I had 10 years to learn to write a novel, and this is the result of it. And so I actually started this, I mean, this book is older than Between the World and Me. It's older than We Were 8 Years in Power. It's older than The Case for Reparations. It's definitely older than Black Panther and all of that stuff. So I had all of that before I came to this. You know, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. Harriet Tubman was like a superhero. She's from Maryland. You know, the way she was described, the things she did. And so it didn't feel like a leap to put that aspect in the book. It felt natural. You know?
Just to have like the Harriet Tubman vibe, because in many ways she was, you know, like I like the way you've spoken about it before, where you say it's like she was teleporting people in a way. Like 1 minute they were here, the next thing they were gone, out of slavery into a different world. You've also done something really interesting here that I feel was purposeful, and that is you have centered the women in the story. And you are one of the people who tackled your critics head on. Some people say, hey, Ta-Nehisi, you're an amazing writer, but I don't see you telling many of the stories in and around not just women, but Black women. For the Black man, you speak strong. Black women seem to be left out. In this book, though, you have a lead character who has powers, who's fighting for freedom, who's fighting an injustice system, but the women around him seem to be part of the reason he can do what he does.
Yeah, and I think like your responsibility is as a writer is to balance two impulses. Like I said, this book is older, so all of the characters in this book are actually older than, you know, like whatever. I mean, it was nonfiction, but the conception of Between the World and Me. You have to, on the one hand, like legitimately hear your critics and actually listen, and then at the same time, like be strong in what you're, you know what I mean, like following your vision.
Trying to do,
You know what I mean? Because you can never just, you know, write for a crowd, but the crowd is not wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like you gotta find some sort of way to be yourself and be the writer that you need to be, without demonizing people that may not see, you know, things the way you see it.
Right.
You know.
Do you think this book might make it easier for some people to delve into the conversations in and around slavery because it exists in a fantastical world? You know, sometimes people can't deal with non-fiction because they're like, oh, whereas when it's, you know, when it's in a fantastical world, there's this element of like, oh, that story was great and that hero was. Do you think there's a part of that you hope it would achieve?
I do. I mean, I think like you take something like The Wire, right? The politics of David Simon are quite clear. He's made them quite clear. But there are people who do not share his politics who love The Wire.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know what effect that actually has on actual politics, you know what I mean? So I don't know, you know, there are probably people who could probably read this book, they probably would not agree with me on reparations and all sorts of, you know, other things. But, you know, when things are in the form of a story, people they just take it differently, you know?
Let me ask you one thing before I let you go and rest. No, because I know how strenuous a book tour can be.
I got a whole book waiting for me.
Yeah, man. I do want to know this. You know, you wrote the book. You still write. You still ponder. You're still out there in the zeitgeist. One of the articles you wrote has drawn a lot of attention. Obviously, criticism, backlash, support, all of the above. And you wrote about Colin Kaepernick. Fascinating article about the cancellation of Colin Kaepernick and cancel culture as a whole. One of the most beautiful sections, and I'll paraphrase you, forgive me, is where you talk about how people like to make it seem like cancel culture is a tool that is only being used today by liberal students and you know, the snowflake left, etc. But you say cancel culture has for long been wielded by those who control the levers of power.
I mean, one of the earliest acts in, you know, proto-American history is like the killing of women up at Salem because they looked at somebody wrong or some other, thing, the Salem witch trials. I mean, and this goes through all of our history. You know, the gag rule during the period of enslavement, you know, the blacklist, Reconstruction, you know, up to this very day, you know, where Trump, you know, routinely writes people off, you know, for all sorts of, you know, minor league reasons. And yet, when we see, you know, some kids or some college student, you know, some college students, you know, whatever, get mad about something, like suddenly that's history's greatest enemy.
Right.
You know?
Now they've gone too far.
Right. I mean, in the case of Colin Kaepernick, I mean, listen, you had a president of the United States who used basically the authority, you know, and, you know, the majesty of the state to threaten the NFL into keeping this guy out of earning a living that he had been training for since he was a kid. I mean, what more effective and devastating act of cancellation can you come with? That don't match anything that, you know, some kids in a cafeteria somewhere, you know, or on a quad who don't like Milo, you know, have done. And yet we find ourselves, you know, focusing on that. You know what I mean? And I, you know, as I, you know, argue in the piece, I think that has a lot more to do with who is doing the canceling than it does with, you know, what we think about canceling.
Oh, that's interesting.
People get canceled all the time. And some people should be canceled, by the way, you know?
But who is canceling can affect how we see the canceling.
That's it.
My friend, thank you so much for coming back onto the show.
Thank you, Trevor.
I hope you rest. I hope you chill. I hope nobody asks you about this book ever again.
I want to hear about it.
Ever again. Buy the book, read the book, but don't ask them about the book. The Water Dancer is available now. Ta-Nehisi Coates, everybody.